Howdy ho folks, CR here bringing you another response video. I'm kind of short on time, so it's going to be a lot of the video cut out, and I'm going to have my conclusion at the end anyway on this, put in my own arguments as well. But I just want to kind of go through and respond to this video.
12-year-old Nicholas Nomkin was accidentally shot and killed by a friend in December 2010. Since that day, his mother, Oksana Nomkin, has become the driving force behind Nicholas's Law, a bill requiring the safe storage of firearms in New York State.
So they already start this off with an emotional intro. This is done on purpose. This is done to get people thinking in more of an emotional state as opposed to a rational state. Bear in mind where they are. New York. New York, the state that is in competition with California to see who can stick it to their gun owners the hardest. You know, they have every single gun law that the gun controllers have been begging for nationwide currently and more. I mean, you have to have a license to even own a firearm in New York. You have all these restrictions with firearms in New York. And even then, they're still not satisfied. There's not enough. We didn't go far enough.
But there is a potential technological solution known as a smart gun. Proponents say it could prevent future tragedies like the Nomkins, and that it could even be more effective than a law when it comes to averting suicides and accidental killings.
So basically your strategy violates one of the basic safety rules, and that's not to rely on technology or mechanical safeties in order to replace safe firearm handling.
The question is, how come you can't find a smart gun anywhere?
It's a double action only. So what happens is when you draw the gun out, all you have to do is pull the trigger. There's no buttons, bells, or whistles on it.
Michael TIMLIN is the owner-operator of a gun store, shooting range, and gun training center. He swears by the time-tested simplicity of the modern firearm.
We want the gun to be about as easy as possible, so then when the gun is used, we don't have any issues with it. What's wrong with hundreds of years of gun ownership? It's not the epidemic that people like to believe. We're living in a perception.
Ladies and gentlemen, at this time, the range is going to go hot. Eyes and ears, please.
We are bombarded constantly with the negatives. We tune into the news every night, and what do we watch? Shoot, shot, kill, shoot, shoot, shoot. We don't see the good sides. Anybody?
First point I like to make is that the gun store owner did make a very valid point. When you have a personal protection firearm, it needs to be ready to go. I have a G19 Generation 4. All you can see is, for safeties, external-wise, is the trigger safety. That's it. It needs to be ready to go. Milliseconds count when it comes to protecting your life. Now, the other point I want to make is that, yes, the news media does tend to show a disproportionate number of criminal firearm uses versus the defensive, the legitimate firearm uses. They do tend to put disproportionate coverage on incidences such as Sandy Hook, while there almost is no coverage of an incident that happened a few months ago where a CHL holder in Texas prevented a mass shooting.
Do you sell any smart guns in this shop?
There is no such thing as a smart gun. We cannot put a device or anything on a firearm that would allow it to become smarter.
And he is right. There is no way you're going to make a firearm smarter. You just can't substitute for safe firearm handling.
It's a technological innovation that has not gone unnoticed in the halls of the White House.
If we can set it up so you can't unlock your phone unless you got the right fingerprint, why can't we do the same thing for our guns?
When your bodyguards are outfitted with them, then we can talk.
But many pro-gun Americans, like Michael TIMLIN, aren't having it.
If there is a device of any kind that would be put onto a firearm in the defense of your life and it fails, then there is no use to have that device. It just will not work. So there's nothing that they can do with smart gun technology that would convince me that it would be good.
This sentiment is echoed by major gun lobbying groups like the National Rifle Association and the National Shooting Sports Foundation.
And both groups do a lot more than lobbying. They're both very big into teaching proper firearm handling. They're very big into gun safety, firearm safety. They're actually doing real things for that area. They oppose to mandating this. Now, the owner of that store, yes, there is a lot of failures with smart gun technology. There are a lot of causes for concern with that technology. And really, when it gets down to it, our modern firearm, our modern handgun ain't broke. It don't need fixing.
At some point, this technology is probably going to be pushed down our throats. Listen, let's be honest. The government at some point in time is going to try. That is a very frightening notion to a guy like myself or anybody who's a...
And his concerns are very warranted. And actually, in New Jersey, they already have a law on the books that says once this technology goes on to the retail anywhere in the country, the FFLs in New Jersey have 3 years to replace their inventory with this. So yes, he has good reason to be concerned. I mean, especially being an FFL in New York, where they just keep on throwing stuff at gun owners in New York and firearm salesmen in New York. And there's just no end to it. So yeah, he does have good cause to be concerned.
That fits you very well, Brian.
Feels good.
Yeah.
Feels real good.
Maybe we'll get a chance to shoot some of those later.
I don't know, maybe I'm being a little anal on this, and maybe I'm the only one who noticed this, but, and I understand it is in the ATF's registry, and that gun is probably unloaded, but did anyone else notice that that guy had his booger picker on the trigger, and the only thing the ATF agent said was, well, that suits you very well.
Yeah, let's do it. Why is the diversity of guns so mind-boggling, yet technologically they've been pretty unchanging for a long time?
I think the early designers got it right.
It's one of those things. If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
There you have it, yes. But
I didn't think it was going to do that.
Yeah.
That's because firearms, since their inception, have been strictly mechanical devices, making them one of the few things unfazed by the electronics revolution.
Yes, guns are a mechanical object. Yes, it's a good thing that they're not fazed by the electric revolution. Yeah, you need your firearm to be mechanical. Your firearm is going to be more reliable if it stays mechanical.
No, these are authenticated smart guns. I'm not seeing anything like that.
No, we have no smart guns in here. There's very few smart guns that have been produced and put on the market. And so it's going to take industry or independent people out there to want to perfect this technology to get it into our, as we know, traditional guns.
There's not really a demand for the technology. It's one of those things. If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Long one that's repeatedly hit a dead end.
If you were using it as a carry gun, you'd have to stop and go,
"This gun must be unlocked through a code."
It's too slow.
Can you imagine trying to defend yourself with that? Hold on, Mr. Bad Guy, I gotta punch my code in now.
In fact, a pair of pioneering American gun manufacturers coordinated with the U.S. government to design a smart gun, and it almost sunk both companies.
It is time for Congress to pull the trigger on legislation that will truly make guns safer.
Okay, and you see, this guy's talking about legislation now. And you wonder why people are concerned about the technology being mandated. Oh, and by the way, dude, when the police departments across this country are using smart guns and your bodyguards are using smart guns, then we can come back and talk.
In 1997, Colt, a firearms company that's been around since the Civil War and helped popularize the revolver, announced it was prototyping a user-authenticated smart gun. In 2001, gun manufacturer Smith & Wesson faced a number of municipal and federal lawsuits over gun violence.
Good afternoon.
So the company cut a deal with the Clinton administration.
Under the agreement, Smith & Wesson will include locking devices and other safety features, and will develop smart guns that can be fired only by the adults who own them.
Okay, first off, several firearms manufacturers face those lawsuits, those frivolous and abusive lawsuits. Now, this is why we have the PLCAA, is because of abusive lawsuits like that. And I personally think that people who file frivolous lawsuits, it doesn't matter what they're filing a frivolous lawsuit against, whether it's a firearms manufacturer, mom and pop store, major companies, small business, etc., etc. People like that should be put in jail for lawsuit abuse.
Smith & Wesson faced a multi-million-dollar drop in value that year and was forced to lay off 15% of its workforce before an eventual sale. Needless to say, Smith & Wesson's smart gun didn't make it out of the lab either.
And where were the gun controllers at that? Hey, gun controllers, did you go out and help support Smith & Wesson? How about all you people that just don't want to do away with gun ownership? You want sensible gun laws? What did you do to help Smith & Wesson? You see, guys, this is why you never cut a deal with the gun controllers.
Even a goddamn briefcase gun.
Yes, and even that goddamn briefcase gun is an NFA Title II item. You have to go through a lot more to get one of those than you do to get a standard NFA Title I firearm.
Some critics out there would say that we have the technology and would work. I'll tell you that we don't think the technology is there yet.
Even the ATF agent tells you the technology ain't there yet.
So as of right now, this is what state-of-the-art looks like.
Full auto. Here we go.
Oh, gee, I wish we could own one of those here in the U.S., but, you know, alas, it's a machine gun manufactured after post-1986. You know, you're welcome, gun controllers.
Hey, cheers.
Hallelujah. I wish it everybody.
Ernst Mauch is a gun legend, known throughout the industry for his work with renowned German arms manufacturer Heckler & Koch.
Okay, HK makes some great firearms. I have a few myself. Now, I understand the guy's sentiments and everything like that, but if smart guns were really the shiznits, well, don't you think at least one government agency would have had a contract out to develop them if they thought it was feasible? I mean, for Christ's sakes, this particular pistol was designed specifically for our U.S. Special Operations. This thing cost over $2,000. I think if our government agencies are going to spend money on something like this, you know, spend this much money on a pistol, I think they would have spent that money on smart gun technology too, had if it was really that promising of a venture.
That hits close to home in households across America. What can you tell me about smart guns?
Smart guns would be a logical choice for a family if they choose to have a weapon for protection. This wouldn't prevent you from protecting your family, but it...
Again, I am sorry for the loss of her child. However, she has said that she's never owned a firearm. They don't have firearms in the house. She doesn't know what she's talking about.
Only if the shooter is wearing a companion watch into which a PIN number has been entered.
The Armament.
Yeah, hold on a sec, bad guy. I got to enter the PIN number in my watch, so my gun will work.
Response was less than positive.
We never sold an Armament pistol. We have no inventory.
And when the IP-1 was first sold in the U.S., the reaction was even more severe.
So anyway, obviously I received numerous death threats today. I really appreciate that. That's classy.
Well, yeah. Given the fact that New Jersey has that law, it's one reason why. And, yeah, guys, by the way, I know that none of my gun-owning friends and none of my fellow gun rights advocates send death threats out. It's stupid, one. Two, it makes us look bad. And three, everyone knows you're not going to carry out those threats. And if you did, those aren't condonable either. And it would make us look even worse. So, guys, knock it off with the death threats if you're sending them.
Every smart gun that we've seen so far has been pretty bad. So this is our most recent prototype of the BioFire smart gun. In this case, this is actually a modified Glock, but when we get to the point of actually manufacturing these, we'll be creating our own custom firearms.
Kai Klepfer has been working.
And he is right. The smart gun technology that's been developed so far is crap.
Though Kai can't have his prototype on campus, he has many parts that compose the internal workings of the smart gun.
This is basically one of our current circuit boards, the brains of the operation in a lot of ways. These are a few of our fingerprint sensors. And when the user picks the handgun up, their finger naturally lands on the sensor, and that's how we start off the process of recognizing the user's fingerprint, basically. And these are a few of the batteries that we're using. You know, they're pretty small and thin. Overall, it's not anywhere near as complicated as it looks. So we've got the fingerprint sensor and the circuit board and everything on this side. You know, the battery is along the other side. A traditional firearm of this style has what's known as a double stack magazine. We sort of switched that to a single stack magazine. So that reduces the number of rounds, but allows us to fit sort of all of the electronics and everything when you sort of naturally grip the hand.
Yeah, Kai can't have his prototype on campus. You know why that is? That place, like every other target for a mass shooting, is a gun-free zone. That's just that plain and simple. And by the way, reducing my magazine capacity versus having that technology, no, I think I'll stick with the higher magazine capacity. So yeah, the reduced magazine capacity is another drawback.
Americans like Michael TIMLIN, very nervous.
Do you think there is still some sort of consumer demand across the country for this technology?
Is there consumer demand for it? No, actually, if you were talking to any true gun owner, there would be no demand for it at all. Matter of fact, it would be the opposite. This is not something we want.
So
it's kind of ironic for you to sit there and dismiss any concerns about mandates and reductions in freedom over this while talking to a gun store owner in New York, of all places.
He's bringing along the iGun, a personalized shotgun that only fires when the user wears a special magnetic tag in the form of a ring.
This is about probably the most successful you're ever going to get with this technology here. And even then, you really are going to dig through your drawer at night when somebody's breaking in to get your ring. You have to remember to carry that ring with you all the time while carrying it for personal protection. Come on.
Nice to meet you. Do you think both of your respective technologies could someday be brought to market and appear in shops like Michael's here?
Definitely. You know, there are people who want to have a firearm in their house but are afraid to, rightfully, because of the possibility of their children getting a hold of it, even when it's properly secured and, it's that one time they forget. If there's people willing to buy it, that means there's people who are willing to sell it.
I'm just waiting for the consumers to start demanding it. And when they're comfortable with it, when they know about it, when they test it, when they know it's reliable, distributors will be carrying it, manufacturers will be making it, and it'll be an option, only an option. And if they want to buy it, great. If they don't, that's fine too.
I do believe that you get...
And I understand what both of these guys are saying, both the developers are saying, and they themselves are being pretty reasonable. Here's the thing. The legislatures, such as the ones in New Jersey, such as some of the ones we've had before, people like Barack Obama, Bill Clinton, and many of our Congress people are not being reasonable with this. In fact, they are the ones that are going to end up having to force your hand to either choose not to develop it or risk having that technology mandated. And they're not talking about having the technology developed for their bodyguards or police officers or federal agents or any other law enforcement agency. No, they're talking about having it solely to mandate on the average American firearm owner. And then, check this out, when that smart gun fails, and a CHL holder or somebody else using a pistol to protect themselves, one of these smart guns to protect themselves, when it fails, the gun controllers, the very ones, by the way, that mandating this technology get mandated, are going to turn around and say, see, a gun can't protect you. Fucking ridiculous.
You guys are onto something, but we start with good intentions and we wind up walking into gun bans. And new technology always leads into gun bans.
And his concerns are very valid on this one. I mean, it doesn't take but a quick Google search now to find out that there were people and there are states that are mandating this technology once it comes out on the market.
Get technology and the government gets their hands on it, or somebody gets their hands on it and say, hey, listen, we're using it for good, and then it becomes a mandatory type situation.
I am dead set against mandates. I want government, Kaidos too, to keep their paws out of this stuff.
And there are several politicians that are just going to ignore your wishes on this one, just so you know, man.
Technology needs for me to be more foolproof. That's really the direction I'm going.
But you will sell them a 1940s vintage Arasaka, literally 30% failure rate when I pull the trigger on some of those things. So we can't say that we're only going to sell them 100%.
And he is correct about the Arasaka. At the end of World War II, the Japanese started putting out their Arasakas really quick because U.S. forces were advancing and they needed a lot more rifles. So a lot of them they slapped together. Yeah, there are a lot of them that are junk. So, but here's the thing. Nobody is talking about buying an Arasaka for personal protection. At least I hope not. It's not a bright choice. In fact, it's not a bright choice to have a bolt-action rifle that's that powerful as a personal protection rifle.
Despite the demonstration, Michael remains unconvinced.
I have two children, 2 years old and 5 years old. I can guarantee you they will never shoot anyone with my gun.
And again, you guys have really failed to address the actual concerns that people would have with these things. It's just plain and simple.
Later we found out that they were left alone in the house at some point, and his friend went and took his father's gun, and
all right, obviously not all the facts were given in this, so again, the only thing I can do is speculate, but again, did the parent teach their children about firearm safety, you know, having a firearm in the home, obviously, or did they just buy the gun and throw it in the drawer, leave it there, tell the kids guns are bad, don't touch them, yada, yada, yada? There's a little bit of a difference there. Usually when a child's old enough, you can take them out to shoot, and 12 is more than old enough to take them out and at least try to shoot the gun at least once so they have an experience on that. And, you know, now they know, and that curiosity is replaced by knowledge. It doesn't sound like it, and I could be speculating, it doesn't sound like the parents of this child did such a thing.
I think absolutely. I think changing technology typically is the way to reduce injury and violence.
David Hemenway is a taxpayer-funded advocate for gun control. You know, I don't put too much faith in what this man has to say.
David Hemenway is the director of the Harvard Injury Control Research Center and the author of Private Guns, Public Health.
A common tactic of gun controllers is to misrepresent firearm-related deaths and try to categorize them as some sort of disease or something of that nature, or basically treat them like a disease. And again, they don't ever take into account the positives of firearm ownership. They don't take into account the people they kill with their stupid gun control laws. They don't try to take any of that account. Instead, they're more about removing people's freedom.
Don't touch, tell a grown-up, promoted, with Eddie Eagle and the like. It doesn't work. There's lots of empirical evidence that it doesn't work.
At least the NRA actually has a gun safety program for kids, as opposed to trying to ram your agenda down everyone else's throats and calling it gun safety, mislabeling it gun safety.
DEBORAH AZRAEL is the Associate Director of the Harvard Youth Violence Prevention Center. Her research focuses on the relationship between gun access and gun death.
Okay, so explain to me why Yemen has a much lower per capita homicide rate than Russia, and yet they have a much greater access to firearms there. Or better yet, you can possibly go to Ms. Namkin and try to explain, despite New York's stringent gun laws, how her child still managed to get accidentally shot.
Rare events when we've been able to talk to pairs of parents and kids. The parent thinks that the kid doesn't know that there's a gun, and the parent thinks that the kid doesn't know where the gun is, and you talk to the kid with the parent out of the room, and the kid does know where the gun is, and the kid has has played with the gun.
Yeah, our parents told me and my brothers when we were kids where the guns were. And no, we didn't go play with them. We knew better than that.
I mean, I understand that there's some cognitive dissonance there, but your kid knows where the Christmas presents are, your kid knows where the gun is.
Yeah, and your kid could find that wristwatch with your smart gun and enter in the PIN code or figure out what it is and then unlock your smart gun.
Both the NRA and the National Shooting Sports Foundation seem to have a stake in curtailing the development of smart guns. They say that they don't.
Okay, so given the actions of the New Jersey legislature, and given the words that have come out of a few of our previous presidents as well as some of our previous congressmen, yeah, people who are law-abiding gun owners that don't want to be mandated to have a smart gun, we like our options, and we like the options to be able to purchase a regular mechanical firearm. Yeah, we do have a stake in curtailing that technology. It's called our freedom.
What they object to is a mandate. To me, the most...
Yeah, guess what? We oppose a mandate. And by we, I mean both the NRA as well as a lot of other law-abiding firearm owners and gun rights advocates. We oppose a mandate. Guess who is pushing that mandate? Your side of the aisle. Guess whose hand is forcing who's here on this one? Your side of the aisle. So don't sit there and tell me, oh, the NRA opposes a mandate and they're opposing the smart guns. Yeah, screw you.
Plausible reason for them to object to that technology is that if you sort of acknowledge that a gun can be made safer, the implication is that guns that don't incorporate smart technology are less safe, and that it's an effort to not open up what might be a Pandora's box of potential liability.
My side of the aisle does not oppose that technology being made available to anybody who chooses to own it. Not in the least bit. We just want them to have the understanding that it's not going to make the firearm any safer. And that's the first thing. What your side of the aisle wants to do, and this is where you get the pushback, is your side of the aisle wants to mandate it. So that way if the firearm being used, well, the smart gun technology fails and that person didn't use that firearm to protect their life and they died in the process, your side wants to come back after that and say, see, we told you guns don't work to protect yourselves, even though you guys were the ones that mandated the piece of equipment that caused the gun not to work to begin with. The second thing, with that whole liability thing, come on, why don't you just come out and say it? You want another excuse to try to file lawsuits against firearm industries. That's what you want to do. Congress didn't pass a gun ban like you wanted, and so instead you're going to take it out on the firearms manufacturers, on the firearms industry. People like you are the reason the PLCAA are in place, and that was a good law to pass. I'm glad for it. And I know that pisses you off to no end that that law is in place. But you know what? Fuck you.
Opinion, the future of human evolution.
Emil Grafstra is not your typical gun guy.
So there's some groups out there that kind of think that RFID is evil. They really think that it's the mark of the beast, and it's, you know, it's some kind of, you know, subscription to Satan himself. So.
Okay, so while I don't buy into this myself, the least you can do, dude, is try to represent the other side's arguments a little bit better. The big concern that people have with the RFID technology and the RFID chips is that one day the government might mandate those chips being implanted into everybody to track their every single location, you know. So, you know, let's get that right here at least. Let's be honest. You know what? I have a gun just like that. It's obviously not biohacked, but I like it better non-biohacked.
Version of the tag that's basically glued to a stick. So that's what's inside the hand right there, little cylinder. And you can see I can kind of pop it up there. You can see it's the edge of it is trying to poke out there.
Can't do it.
Yeah. You can poke it and move it around a bit.
All right, so what happens when you want to let a friend shoot that? You're going to have that planned in there permanently? Well, what about a kid? What about your kid, I should say? I mean, you know, you give them that implant, but then again, wouldn't that defeat the purpose of the smart gun there, the technology there, preventing the kid from getting access to the gun when you're not around? I mean, what do you do after the range? Say, oh, hey, Junior, I know we had fun today, but Daddy's got to perform a little bit of field surgery. I mean, come on, dude.
Operating the weapon, or you and your spouse, or you and other authorized users, it's kind of hard to beat a weapon that fundamentally...
Okay, dude, seriously, you were pointing that gun at the cameraman, and you want to lecture everyone else about what is safe? Give me a break, dude. Oh, and by the way, you don't hold it like this. You hold it like this. See?
The heart of the argument about regulating. All I want to do is make a smart gun so my kid couldn't shoot themselves or me.
Okay, dude, so, well, on this one, you have to also understand that there are people that don't want to be forced to have that technology. And, you know, I understand that this is not your fault. This is nothing of your doing. But there are legislatures that want to foster the technology onto everybody else, force them to have that technology. And I know maybe some people are venting their anger in the wrong direction here at the wrong person, but still you have to understand that there is a very real threat of that happening. Politicians have talked about it. New Jersey actually has a mandate on their books right now. The second the first gun goes on the market, or they become widely available on the market or something like that, all the FFLs in New Jersey have 3 years to clean out their entire inventory and replace them with smart guns. And yeah, you can kind of understand where the frustration's there on that one. It's the gun controllers that are forcing this hand here.
The initial test fire of the world's first biohacked smart gun is a success. But Emil soon runs into an unforeseen problem.
It may have locked. Yeah, it locked.
Locked?
So I think the shock from the firing is actually resetting it.
All right, so, dude, it really wasn't quite so successful and as reliable as you thought it was, right? I mean, let's face facts. Both of us know that that's chambered in 5.7 by 28 millimeter. Not a very powerful cartridge. Not a cartridge that produces a lot of concussive shock. So, yeah, you can understand why people are a little leery of the that to begin with, that technology to begin with now?
Personal use, but you know, if people really want smart guns for these scenarios, they're going to have to get loud. They're going to have to be aggressive about wanting it. And this isn't to say contact your senator or anything. This is just to say contact gun makers, like contact people actually building guns. And say,
here's the thing, man. Guess what? Most people that want only smart guns, they're people like you, not very big gun people. They don't account for much of anything on that market, right? And yeah, I think it is a good idea in part to contact your rep and senator and say, hey, look, you know, I want this technology. I don't want it mandated, though. You know, keep your dirty paws off of it. This is why people are pushing back against this technology right now, is because legislators and other politicians are trying to ram this down people's throats. The New Jersey legislature rammed a mandate down the people in New Jersey's throat for this technology once it became widely available.
We want this technology. That's really how it's going to work, is driving market forces rather than regulatory forces.
What would you say to someone?
So again, dude, what's stopping you from getting an FFL and just even for gunsmithing and putting this technology in people's own personal firearms that want this technology in their firearms, if that's the case? If there's really a market for you should have no problem finding customers. And moreover, I mean, if it was really that lucrative of an idea, why haven't you taken this idea to law enforcement agencies across the country and said, hey, well, we can update your department's firearms with this technology? You know, why don't you go to Mr. Bloomberg himself and say, hey, you know, I understand that you like safe guns, you know, how about, you know, since everyone has a problem with smart gun technology, how about, you know, you pay me a certain amount of money and I'll equip all your bodyguards' guns with this technology? Wouldn't that make a little bit more sense?
Who thinks guns are just fine the way they are, so why should we try and innovate them?
Well, they've never had their child shot.
Yeah, and guess what? The number of kids that accidentally shoot themselves in this country is very low. You know, despite what gun controllers would have you believe. It's almost a statistical zero. Now, you obviously aren't a real gun guy, you know, given your statements. You just have that gun because that's something you saw in a video game and thought was cool and you were going to buy one, right? So, again, I'm not going to have a problem with that, and I don't even have a problem with you equipping it with that biohack technology. I don't have a problem with you putting that technology in other people's guns who want that technology. But most of us who have a firearm for personal protection, guess what? When we squeeze that trigger, we need it to go bang. And if we have to squeeze that trigger again, we need it to go bang again and not wait for that biohack servo to reset. Dude, you know, you're talking about a life or death situation here if that gun does not go bang. You were talking about possibly losing your life if that gun does not go bang when you pull the trigger. This is the type of situation we're talking about, dude.
By accident, and they have no ability to step into anybody else's shoes or really imagine a scenario where somebody who is not fit to operate a weapon has one. To say there's no room for improvement, that's just ignorance and stubbornness, really. And you know, it's oftentimes it takes serious tragedy for them to open their eyes a bit and say, oh, maybe a little bit of innovation and change could be a good thing in certain circumstances.
Here we are. Listen, this technology exists and people are working on it and people are trying to help. And not to get on board with that? I don't get.
If you could sit down with someone who owns a gun, but who opposes user-authenticated technology, what would you say to them?
I would say that it could definitely save somebody's life in your house.
And if you ever have to rely on that particular firearm with that technology to protect yourself, well, that could get you killed.
Because everybody is responsible until all of a sudden, oops, and then...
Yeah, and again, right now, you're taking your frustration out on normal, responsible firearm owners. We didn't say that every firearm owner was responsible, but you're talking about a small percentage of firearm owners that act irresponsibly here. Right? You know, I grew up in a house with firearms. Hell, my parents told me and my brothers where the guns were and the ammo was well before we reached your son's age at the time he passed. We've all grown up all right. None of us have been shot, you know. So, again, I mean, and this is the same is true for a lot of other gun owners. And I do have a large number of firearm owning friends. We haven't accidentally shot ourselves. Our children haven't accidentally shot themselves or somebody else. You know, what you're talking about is a very small and negligible number.
This happens. Then all of a sudden, you're not responsible anymore. And
okay, so I'm not going to tiptoe around that. That last statement there, you made that up completely. Now I understand you're upset about losing your son. Any parent would be. Any parent in the right mind would be. However, there's nobody in the gun community, no gun rights advocate that's going to sit there and pretend that the parents of your son's friend didn't at least have some role to play in that. Right? Now, given that, we'll move on forward to the conclusion. So yes, dude, obviously motherboard in its entirety. Yeah, there is an opposition to mandating that technology. There's a big opposition to it. There is some opposition to the development of the technology altogether. Namely, because of legislatures such as the legislatures in New Jersey who did pass a mandate on that technology. Namely, previous presidents like Barack Obama and Bill Clinton, who even show up in your own video, even several legislatures who have called for that, called for the mandating of that technology. So if you want to know where the opposition on the gun rights side of things comes to the mere development of this technology, you need to look at your gun controller friends. They're the ones that put that opposition there to begin with. They're the ones who have made the situation so it really is taking a huge chance with your freedoms by letting that technology become available. With those. Now, me personally, I don't, am not opposed to the development of the technology. Where I come in is the mandating of the technology. And you notice these mandates, they don't mandate this to their bodyguards. They don't mandate this to any law enforcement agencies. And by the way, law enforcement officers are far more likely to get their guns taken off of them by criminals, namely because they have to actually go and apprehend the criminal. They have to actually put hands on the criminal, put them in cuffs, search them. You know, those sorts of things where they are at risk of a criminal getting a hold of their gun. You know, these people, these legislators don't propose mandating it for law enforcement. There isn't a military or law enforcement agency worldwide that's trying to buy this technology right now. If there was, there'd be some pretty lucrative contracts from it. HK, that gun company themselves, has solely, I mean, pretty much solely rely on military and law enforcement contracts. Yes, they do sell some guns to civilians, but their moneymaker is with government contracts. So yeah, other reasons I won't personally have a smart gun. Well, obviously you can tell the technology isn't reliable. 2, I like to let other people shoot my firearms. 3, I handle my firearms safely, and the extra money spent on that technology, in my book, is just wasted. 4, that technology will make the gun cost more money. And it's going to put, if it's mandated, it's going to put firearms out of the hands of a lot more people, just due to financial reasons as is. 5, that technology can get somebody killed. And the reason why your side of the aisle is so dishonest on this is because you will refuse to admit this. Even after seeing the evidence here in this video, in this very video, you've seen some malfunctions with that technology that could cost somebody their life if they had to use that firearm to protect their lives. You know? So, I know there are other reasons, but I'm going to wrap it up there. Y'all take it easy out there. Thanks for watching.